Go.
It's the appointed time and we have a quorum. Let's invite our guests in.
Simple
Declaration. Any? Like before. At the time when the Scouts Association was redeveloped, I was the treasurer. Funds like that? I can't remember. Funds, something to do with the Liberal Party. Well, I took part in some of the work when the Scouts Association headquarters was redeveloped. I'm going to dispense with the introduction of government officials, and we have your name list, and this is not the first meeting. We have Ms. Tanya Chen, who is the main member to ask questions. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Well, for reports 1 and 2, did you, was the decision to carry out investigation made at the same time, and was it the same unit that made the decision, Director of Audit? Yes, we started the first and the second report at the same time. We first liaised with the IRD, the Inner Revenue Department, and then work our way through. Can you recall when did you first contacted the IRD, whether it's verbal or by correspondence? I think it was in mid-September 2016. You liaised with the IRD, yes. Can you tell me whether it is verbal or in written form? Director for Audit. We had a meeting, and there was also a letter sent to the IRD. In Report 2, it says on the 29th of September there was a memo sent to Inner Revenue Commissioner. The first line says that there was a meeting the day before. I think it was the 28th of September. So that was the first meeting with the IRD. Right. In mid-September, you informed them about the investigation or inquiries. Right. Prior to that, there was a telephone conversation. Yes. Then I have questions to ask for the Commissioner for the Inner Revenue. So do you confirm that in mid-September you received information that there were investigations related to charities, its regulations related to charity and fundraising activities? Commissioner of Inner Revenue. In mid-September, we received notification from the Audit Commission that there would be inquiries made. What action did you take? Did you contact relevant departments or bureaus that the Audit Commission is going to take action? Did you notify relevant staff members, Commissioner of the IR? They inform us that it's about charities, and we liaise with the relevant section. We had a meeting with them to understand what areas they would cover, and we would make preparations. It's confined to just a few people in the management, so it did not involve other bureaus or departments. Did you take the initiative to notify other bureaus or departments, or did you leave it to the Audit Commission to do it? Commissioner, Well, you will have to wait for me to call your name first, otherwise you wouldn't have time to think. You mean otherwise it will be just like a machine gun, a question and answer. You're saying that I am one? Well, just wait for me to call your name first. When we received notification from the Audit Commission that they inform us, and then because it is related to the FSDB, we inform them. When they sent us a memo, the memo says that mention about notifying other departments. The memo dated 29th of September or earlier, the first one. I'm not sure about the date. Wait for me to call your names first. Sorry. Can I ask the chairman to ask the commissioner to find out the date of the memo? Commissioner? Yes, we'll do that. Thank you. Ms. Chan? Can you tell me why you asked these questions? You may have a plan in your head, but we would like to know. Well, it's difficult for me to ask further questions without the answer. Well, we have to be fair to our witnesses. You have to make it clear what you are getting at. If there's any, if it's about documentation, then they need to be informed, because this is not done by Powers and Privileges, the LC Powers and Privileges Ordinance. It's not that I have found any mistake, I just want confirmation about dates. Ms. Chan. Well, today we will cover 3 areas. This may very well be the last hearing of Chapter 1. We'll cover a number of areas. In relation to the IRD, we will have some final questions to ask, and also about grants M and N related to lands, and grants M and N is also relates also to the Home Affairs Bureau, and we would like to ask them final questions about Chinese Temples Committee. So, grants M and N. I will first go to grant N. On the 27th of May, after that, on the 22nd of June, we received a reply from the HAB. On the 29th of May, the Secretariat asked a number of questions. On the 22nd of June, we received a reply from the HAB containing some explanations, which I don't really understand. That's why I would like to get some confirmation. But before I do that, I would like to ask, in relation to the Executive Council decision in 1959 and 1980 in relation to private treaty grants, there are a number of areas. Is it Ms. Chan or Ms. Chang? Is Karen Chan. Well, now I refer to the one in 1981. I can't remember the paper number. It's Gen 20. It's in a memo form. Well, when I receive the documents, it's not in order, so I have to take it apart and restaple them together. So, just for my easy reference, I would like a confirmation. The policy says it allows a charity, in the case of redevelopment, to add a commercial element or even a residential element. But in relation to commercial element in paragraph 11, there are some principles. D. It says that in relation to the commercial element, market rate of the land value has to be collected. It's Gen 2. It's the 1981 memo of the Executive Council. Yes, in relation to the commercial element, we would consider charging market rate for the land value. However, we will consider on a case-by-case basis. Grant N. Did you look to see if it has gone through the Executive Council? Director of Lands. Yes, approval was sought from the Executive Council. Well, this is slightly different from Grant N. Land premium has been paid, but it's rather affordable. It's $30,200,000, and I have already left aside because of the construction of bus terminus and telephone exchange, which is the former is now bus terminal. The government paid them back, and it is more than the land premium paid. Did you refer to the discussion of the Executive Council in the discussion of this case? Acting Director of Lands. For case N, according to our record, the land value forms part of it. We have charged them 100% of the market rate, and it referred to the part of the car park. In relation to the hostel, at that time they would like to add a commercial element to generate income, to subsidize the provision of social service. So at the time of the calculation of the land value, we only took into account the land value of the car park. So land value only reflects the car park, but what the most profitable part is actually the hostel. If you refer to the reply of the HAB 22nd of June, it says, let me read it out. I refer to the English version. It says that when approving grant N, they have taken into account the income to be generated, and this will enable the government to reduce a subsidy gradually to an eventual complete cancellation. As a result, the hostel should be allowed to be opened to take guests from the public to generate income. So, the decision of the Executive Council said that full market rate of the land value had to be taken into account. Just now that the acting director said that they only took into account the car park. However, the most profitable part is actually the hostel. The HAB reply is R68/1/Gen 20, and it was A and B that I read out, page 1 and 2 of the Chinese version, and also the same for the English version. Why, on what basis would you draw such a conclusion? Did you actually look at the decision of the Executive Council? Please refer to Gen 20. Yes, pages 1 and 2 of Gen 20. We refer to the discussion of the Executive Council. The original intent has taken into account the provision of youth services, and on that count, resources had to be put in, so they needed income. And we see that the profit will not be redistributed. They will all be plowed back to the provision of youth development, which is in line with the requirement of the HAB at that time. Tanya, well, let me first explain to you. Perhaps I will tell you what I think. No, just let me tell you about the history. In Cox Road, the headquarters, at that time it was in Cox Road. I'm talking about the Scouts Association. The association gave the land back to the government, and the government granted another site, and there was an agreement. There are two parts in the redevelopment of the headquarters. First is the headquarters, and there will be something like a hotel or whatever it is. And then there was the $30 million. It was $30 million at that time, so it was a substantial sum. And that explained the decision of the Executive Council. Chairman, I thank you for your explanation. I asked the question because it says clearly in the land lease that what the headquarters comprises of, and there is 0.6 special conditions. We see some more information. And in the Executive Council paper states that if a charity is to redevelop these premises, it says that at the right time, well, I'll refer to paragraph 11B.
For quarters or offices of other public services, e.g., for example, accommodation for other voluntary agencies if appropriate in new development， 又或者係其他嘅一啲適合嘅一啲
or hostels or dormitory, something like that.
At a time when the premium was considered, the Lands Department said that only the premium of the car park was considered, not the guest house. You can read the record. That is not disputable. I want to ask the the Secretary for Home Affairs, why the purpose of the EXCO was this. Now, commercial meant income generating. At that time, I can recall that there was an agreement. After they made profits, they repaid the cost for redevelopment. The money they subsequently received would be devoted to youth activities. That was the whole package. And the government would gradually reduce its subsidy on youth activities. Yes, correct. I just provide supplementary information, the Secretary. Thank you, Chairman, for your brief introduction to the background, historical background. That was also the discussion of the EXCO. The objective was very clear. The project was approved because there would be an institution which would put resources into youth developments that was entirely in line with the directives of the EXCO. Chairman, I do not agree. Well, I will point out the chapters and verses. Let me, to refute that, well, let me move on to another question. Now, when the SWD was dealing with the issue, there was a gradual reduction of subsidy. But in the recent reply given by the SWD, the gradual reduction was also mentioned. But when it was transferred to the Home Affairs Bureau, the subsidy increases instead of going down. The Secretary for Home Affairs said that he considered something, say between 2004, 2005, 2005, 2006, there were reductions, $540,000 and also $670,000. That was miles apart. That were miles apart from what is said by the SWD. The SWD had to consider the repayment of capital expenditure, and yet the cut was to the tune of $4 million. Yet the Home Affairs Bureau, after the Scout Association repaid all the costs, just cut $500,000 or so, and it was a big deal, they thought. I want to ask whether the Home Affairs Bureau has ever considered whether the sum is of a certain proportion to the incomes of the guest house. What is the proportion of that amount to the incomes of the guest house? Secretary for Home Affairs, concerning your reply in Gen 20. Well, roughly speaking, annually they receive about $90 million, and our subsidy was about $10 million. That was the range. What do you mean by they receive $90 million? And that was for the whole guest house, catering, and also car parking fees, about $90 million. Where did he obtain such information, Mr. Chairman? The information is available in the Internet. Ms. Chen, if Ms. Chen wants... Chairman, what I saw from the Internet was entirely different. From the Internet grantee M, the financial report, how they identify their hotel revenue, room revenue, and sometimes higher charges of venue. What is your source of information? These three pieces were obtained from the web page of grantee M. Well, let me tell you briefly. Grantee N or M? N. Can I call the name directly? N for Nancy. It's okay if you call. You give the name. Yes, and on the Scout Association's website, they listed the hotel revenue. They have breakdowns under turnover, hostel revenue. Sometimes they call it hotel revenue. I have to check the past years. Sometimes room revenue, sometimes revenue from hiring of venue. And then under one item, under hostel revenue, license fee and car parking fee. Now here, in recent years, let me tell you their incomes, according to the financial report. 2013, $280 million, government subvention, 17 million, 6%. 2014, $283 million, subvention, 15 million. 5.6% of hotel revenue. 2015, hotel revenue, $257 million, subvention, $25.6 million, 10% about. 2016, $227 million, subvention, $23 million, about 10%. And this year's budget, Mr. Chairman, Home Affairs Bureau subsidy to other uniformed groups, $100 million. But their income is more than the subsidy, the lump sum for all the uniform groups. Well, I refer. What do you mean by the $90 million? It's not the revenue; it's the profits or surplus. Ms. Chan referred to the total income in comparison with our subsidy. If you look at 2015-16 total revenue, $250 million. Total expenditure, $160 million. As for the regular subvention, that year was $23 million. You can see the overall picture. Our subsidy is about, or was about 10% of their income, according to that year. Chairman, I also want to show you the facts and the numbers. Now you charged them land premium $30 million, and they had revenue of about several hundreds of millions of dollars per year. Now you cannot put it that way. The premium, $30 million, was for the car park and for the exchange, for the telephone exchange. That was very clear. That was the policy. We can't challenge the policy. There was no premium. If you refer to the 30 million, the director, you can answer the question. I have to clarify the facts. It's very clear, according to record, the $30-odd million were for the car parks, car parking spaces, and not the telephone exchange. But not the telephone exchange. There was no premium. Because there was land exchange of Cox Road. Cox Road, Austin Road site in exchange for Cox Road site. Chairman, I cannot see this in the report. They have to confirm this fact. Is it possible to confirm whether the chairman said was right? And do you have any record? Because of the yielding of the Cox Road site, the headquarters site was free of premium. We can confirm that they returned to the Cox Road site and the government didn't compensate them. Well, Chairman, I want to focus on commercial use. The site is big. They need a car park in Tsim Sha Tsui. They were allowed to use available sites, available land to build a car park, and there was a need to expand the exchange. Therefore, commercial premium was charged. I want to ask, through the chairman, the Lands Department. Is a hotel a commercial use? The director. Well, let me put it this way. The so-called land exchange, now the Cox Road site was a STT. So it is not, it was a private treaty grant. Whether, as for Ms. Chen's question, whether whether hotels commercial use, yes, indeed, it is. So lounge, restaurants, are they commercial use? Yes, they are. Do you charge any premium for that? According to the record, no. All right, then let me put a question to the Secretary for Home Affairs. In your reply, I want to clarify one point. There are three catering service, three restaurants. One restaurant, one beverage facility, which has gone before the Town Planning Board for approval, and there is a Western restaurant and lounge. Now it was said that it was the ancillary facility of the hostel and therefore could be open to the public. I don't understand this point. How do you distinguish the two? Is it by the floor level or by what? According to the building plan, which was also mentioned, is also mentioned in the lease, there's ground floor, basement, and things like that. How do you distinguish whether it is or it is not an ancillary facility? Well, as for the canteen, our understanding is that canteen should be for the users of the lot, those working at that lot. It facilitates the users of the building, and it should not be open to the public. As for the hostel, the beverage facility of the hostel, usually hostels do have, or guest houses do have such facilities. If the guest house is open to the public, then the ancillary facilities in the guest house, including the restaurant and lounge, should be open to the public under the lease. So, this is it. I don't understand this. Would you refer to para 11? Just now you referred to para 11. Upon redevelopment, they may be required to provide space to accommodate other groups and other community groups. Well, I don't see any relationship with that. My understanding is that now I have this question. Now you feel that you think that the restaurant, Western restaurant and lounge are not part of the canteen. A canteen can serve Chinese food, Western food, and serve drinks, alcoholic drinks. Why you think a restaurant and lounge is an ancillary facility? Now we look at the location. The canteen is in the basement, and part of it is on the ground floor. The canteen is for the whole restaurant. As for the lounge and restaurant, is on the upper floors, is attached to the hotel or guest house. It's normal that the customers of the guest house who make use of the restaurant lounge. So does it mean that they can continue to demolish some rooms and expand the restaurant? It's not so easy. We have to consider the nature. They are ancillary facilities. The size cannot be very big. Ancillary facilities opening to the public. Does it mean that if I can prove that a lot of people are queuing up, then I can expand the restaurant? Is it so? The buildings department has restrictions on back-house facilities. It is not unlimited. Is there any proportion then? There should be. Yes, there is. It depends on individual situation. Chairman asked the question because according to the lease, there is a plan of basement, though I have not seen it. So there is a basement, and the restaurant, the Chinese restaurant, appeared, and I think in the 1990s. The Chinese restaurant was somewhere between the lounge and the Western restaurant, and I cannot see the logic of justifying that. So I'm not happy with the answer. I will follow that up later. Does the Home Affairs Bureau confirm the position of the Lands Department, you accept that these are ancillary facilities? Yes, we agree. So I want to ask you, in the future, what procedures will they have to go through since they are ancillary facilities? Do they need to go to the Town Planning Board for approval? Now, the ancillary facilities of guest houses do not require any change in lease. They belong to they are part of the guest house. Is there anything to follow up on the part of the Home Affairs Bureau? You say that you are trying to confirm that the operation of the restaurant, Western restaurant and lounge are in line with the requirements. Now, we check the lease and we find that that is in line with the wording of the lease. The Director of Lands has already confirmed this. We've all agreed on this. Chairman, in calculation of income generated from the hostel is now a hotel and it is open to the public. The restaurants are open to the public, and I find this not acceptable. And concerning the lease, it is said that they should have the management committee and they should have meetings. And according to the lease, Section 11C, they should have a management committee. The administration has listed their meeting or affairs committee meeting. Now, in the lease, do you know what's the terms of reference, or what should the management committee do in the lease? The management committee is to manage and to set directions and also scrutinize financial reports.
So it is about this item, because in English it's very specific.
A management committee comprising representatives of the Scout Association of Hong Kong, the Director of Social Welfare or his representatives, and the Secretary for District Administration or his representatives to ensure the proper and efficient operation of the income-generating facilities of the Scout headquarters and the vehicle park 咁樣嘅。咁你清楚知道。
So you are clear about this. Secretary, can you explain to us about your subvention? Well, because some of it is rental subvention, but now they do not have to pay rent. So you have held back the subvention. Can you explain to us from that perspective, Chairman? Let me put it this way. For this grantee N, just now I explained that it is allowed to receive income to subsidize youth development. And also we've explained about the facilities therein. And there are two questions. Audit has also pointed out these two questions. First, we have to work in accordance with the Ex-Code's directives, and the subvention would have to be reduced gradually because now they have commercial income. We have done certain things in this area, but I myself feel that's not sufficient in terms of speed and extent. So I've asked my colleagues to talk to the Scouts Association. In the future, we will have to formulate a practicable plan so as to reduce the subvention to them. When we have a conclusion, we will report to the PAC. This is the first thing that we will follow up on. Secondly, just now you talked about a management committee. We should send a representative to the committee to look at the financial statement. But it seems that we stopped doing this somewhere on the way. It's not ideal. We have already convened a meeting, and now we will be looking at the financial statements. And in the future, we will be gradually reducing the subvention to them, and we will keep on discussing with them. So we are working in these two directions. Now, you didn't go to the meeting. Well, look at those years that you haven't been to the meeting, and what's the reason behind? Well, because that's an agreement with the developer for building this structure, and I think that's a period of 25 years. After 25 years, the management committee, well, actually, the management committee should be very clear about their financial positions. That's what the management committee does. I think you can look at their history. I think the scout directors should still be there, and you can talk to them. That would help you understand question number 2. That is why didn't you go to the meetings? As for the hotel or hostel, the Scouts Association is managing it. So you didn't go to the meetings, you just gave all the management to the Scouts Association. You have to look at the history, and then you will understand more. Now, in Gen 20H, we set out very clearly about the years. In 1998, there was no meeting. And of course, there were some changes in the middle. It was sent over from the SWD to the HAB, and from 1998 onwards, the HAB hasn't attended the meetings. I suggest now that is not ideal, so we will follow up on this. Well, I think you are clearer about a lot of things, and you know much more than the secretary. Well, I don't have questions right now. Maybe I'll let other members ask. Kenneth? I would like to follow up on the regulation of Chinese temples. At the last meetings, Ms. Tanya Chen and Mr. Lam Chak-ting asked about the management of Chinese temples. They asked very detailed questions, and I've looked at the Chinese temples ordinance. I would like to say something in general first. Now, for the Chinese Temples Ordinance, it was enacted in 1928. I may say something unpleasant. Well, the colonial government enacted this piece of legislation in accordance with the skin color of the worshippers. Well, for other religious institutions, there are no such legislation. So the colonial government was just looking at the skin color of the worshippers. It's really strange. Why there's a Chinese temples ordinance? Now, because of historical reasons, the HAB is now having its hands bound. Now, there are 4 types of Chinese temples. 25 of them are regulated directly by CTC. 20 of them are delegated temples. I think that is in accordance with the delegation agreements. And for some other temples, 302 of them are registered. 250 Chinese temples are not registered, but they still call themselves Chinese temples. Now, this is not ideal because there are 4 types of regulation and some are even not regulated. There are 250 of them that are not regulated. In 2012 and 2015, the government reviewed the Chinese Temples Ordinance. So that's the macroscopic picture. I would like to ask the Secretary, for the 250 so-called Chinese temples which are not registered, first, are they charities? And second, under the Chinese Temples Ordinance, is there a mechanism which would make the 250 unregistered temples register? Well, Chairman, I have a question. Well, for this case, it's about 2 delegated temples, and now they are looking at the auditing issues. But if you are talking about the management policy or supervision of Chinese temples, well, on that front, the HAB has been reporting to members all along. But is this an appropriate occasion for us to talk about the policy? Well, you have to tell us the policy first. Because this is a value for money audit, and we have to look at governance. So you need to let us know more. We want to know whether your work is value for money. And from the perspective of governance, what have you done? Yes, of course, I understand that's a policy. Chairman, for these 4 types of temples, well, for the unregistered Chinese temples, of course, they are unregistered. Well, you ask us whether they are charities. We do not have the information because they are not registered. I think, well, for members of the public or worshippers, when they go to temples, they would not go online first to find out whether the temple is registered or not. I am referring to 5.12. In 2012 and 2015, you conducted some reviews, and then you came up with some directions and strategies. Last time, members asked about the delegated temples. And the Secretary said that we should be focusing on the Chinese temples that are covered. Now, for the delegation agreements, do you have templates or standard terms in them? Or each institution would have its own set of delegation agreements? We have a template, and we also have a standard requirement. Now, there are 2 organizations that you have not continued your cooperation with them, but have you signed new delegation agreements with them now? Chairman, at the last meeting, I also mentioned this. Well, the situation now is not ideal. For these 2 institutions, if no agreement is signed with them, we have the right not to delegate the job to them. However, we have to look at local culture. We want to continue to negotiate with them. Well, after reading the audit report, we have started our negotiation. no matter whether it's with the CTC or with the district officers, we have continued our negotiation. We hope that they would agree to sign the delegation agreements, and we also hope that they would comply with certain requirements in the agreement. Well, Chairman, this is the question. For that 20 delegated temples, they may not want to be regulated by those institutions anymore. They may want to be like the other 302 registered temples. And you do not have a sanction mechanism for this 20 temples. This is not ideal, but it seems that you're telling me that there is no mechanism to handle this. Now, can you take a step backward? That is, just ask these temples to register, and then each temple would have a management committee. Over the past decades, you've tried to do a lot of management work or compliance work, but it seems that some temples are out of control. Now, for the delegated temples, they are different from the temples that are directly run by CTC, because for the CTC's assets, the secretary is the trustee. Is that a legal structure? Secretary. Yes, Mr. Leung is right. There are two types of temples. Some of them are directly under CTC and some of them are delegated, but the land would belong to the government. As for those who are not registered, the land may not belong to the government. The regulation will be different. Under the President's ordinance, we cannot say that the land belongs to us, but we don't care. You just take care of it. And there's no delegation agreement is needed. That's not true. We will continue to do our work. As for this ordinance, whether it's outdated, I can tell Mr. Leung and members, yes, it is a bit outdated. But we have already conducted a number of public consultations. So before overhauling the piece of legislation, we still have to do our regulation. In particular for the temples on government's land, we still have to follow the law when we work. Well, for those directly under CTC and for the delegated temples, the difference is about the assets and who legally owns the assets. Well, for the CTC managed temples, the income and expenditure would be handled by the funds under CTC. And for other temples, there may be different modes of operation. The Secretary says that for the delegated temples, their lands are still owned by the government. So for the CTC managed temples and delegated temples, the assets, income and expenses are the most important factor for differentiating the two. Yes, there are a lot of differences, but I would like to point out two major differences. Now, if it's directly under CTC, the CTC will directly recruit the management for its temples. However, if it's a delegated temple, then the institution itself will recruit staff. So there are different ways of managing the temples. This is point number one. Point number two, the financial issues. Now, if these are CTC temples, the income would be put in the Chinese Temples Fund, and we would report to LegCo every year concerning this. However, for delegated temples, the income would not be put in the Chinese Temples Fund. They have an independent account. And this is settled in the delegation agreements. The account would have to be made public so that it's subject to public inspection. In the audit report, some questions about governance are raised. Now, if you look at the structure, temples, delegating institutions, and then CTC, and then HAB, there is a 4-tier structure. So when a temple does something, you would not be aware of it fast. This is not ideal. Due to historical reasons, you cannot put all the temples under your direct control, right? According to the ordinance, you cannot do that. Well, Chairman, we have to look at the present law for governing the temples. And according to the present legislation, not much can be done. So I have a question for the Secretary. So for those directly under CTC, they are different. And for the 20 and 25, they are fixed figures. You cannot change the numbers if the ordinance is not amended. As for the remaining 302, even though they want to be managed by you, the ordinance does not give you the power to do so, right?
Perhaps let me make it clear. Under the legal framework, that is the case. However, if the delegated organization, say, for example, these two, we would continue to discuss with them on delegation, and they would continue. But should there be a day when we could not reach an agreement, we have the power to take over the temple, to manage them directly, or we can find another delegated organization. Just now, Mr. Leung talked about those who have registered, and if they would like to be managed by us, then we are able to do that. But as I've said, that we have finished the public consultation. Members of the LegCo are aware of progress. We incline towards a more relaxed approach towards religious matters instead of tightening our control. So we don't have a conclusion yet. We will continue to listen to views. That's fine. Well, what I heard was that delegated organizations are not given a free rein. If they are recalcitrant, you are able to take back the delegation. Well, if for these two organizations, if they continue to ignore you, please exercise this power. At the same time, I heard that the direction is to encourage freedom of religion. That's right, because it's enshrined in the basic law. In the audit report, paragraph 5.12, the reform is to relax your control. Out of the 20 temples under the management of the CTC, is there any way for you to encourage them to manage themselves? Because a lot of the matters are taken up by the HAB, say for example recruitment. Do you have plans to let them manage these matters? Let me ask this. Are there any rules or provisions to delegate power to the CTC for them to manage these matters themselves? Secretary, first, I want to clarify that recruitment is not done by the HAB but by the Secretariat of the CTC. I may be the chairman of the MTC. Other members are members from the public, social dignitaries. In relation to other temples, whether we can take them back and manage them ourselves, we don't rule that possibility. That includes these two organizations. And as to whether we can let them manage themselves, that depends on the situation. Freedom of religion is very important. However, members of the public would like us to regulate certain matters, say for example, finances. So that is about A and B under 5.12. In paragraph 5.10, there are lots of problems. Failure to submit it, late submission. In the delegation agreement, every organization has to prepare 2 documents and submit them. That is, the audited accounts and the administrative report. These are very important documents. Of course, the organizations will have to do it. What about CTC directly managed temples? Do they have to submit these documents as well? Secretary. Is Mr. Leung talking about those that directly managed ones? Well, let me make it clear. There are 20 that are directly under the CTC. Do they have to prepare these accounts, or CTC will prepare a consolidated accounts and administrative report? That's my question. Secretary. Temples directly under the CTC is included in the consolidated figures, which is available on the internet. So this consolidated figure, does it mean that for each temple they still have the 2 documents, and the CTC will consolidate the information, upload it on the internet? The consolidated information is based on the information submitted by them. Well, Mr. Leung said these 2 documents are very important. The information will affect your consolidated figure. When you receive the documents from them, did you do anything to check them? It's a consolidated figure that gives you a general picture, but public expectation is rising. If these directly managed temples can prepare their own documents, it would be even better. So we're considering whether to make them separate so that the public would know about the individual temples on top of the consolidated information. amending the Chinese temple ordinance is something for the long run. For directly managed temples and delegated temples, they should follow the same approach, submitting the documents. And about 6 months after the year end, they will be made available, uploaded onto the internet, because the information is very important to the public. It also enhances governance transparency. That's something basic. Secretary, I think you need to find time to do it properly. The amendment of the ordinance may take 5-7 years because you will have to go through a lot of public consultation. Can the Secretary promise me that there will be a timetable to require such basic disclosure? I agree with Mr. Leung. I don't think it will have to take legislative amendment to get it done. We will consider it. Once we have a decision, we'll inform you. What about the timetable? We'll look into it. Just give us a written reply. I don't have any other questions about Chinese temples. I think I've asked all the questions I have in the Public Accounts Committee. The other issues that have to be dealt with are more to do with policy. It's not really something to do with the money for value or audit. But I do think that that is very important to check whether it is value for money. Before Paul and Tanya ask question, I would like to get some more information for Tanya in relation to grantee N. Director, can you ask from the Scouts Association information from land exchange to land grant and and general information about the agreement and what is to be done when? Give us the information so that we can prepare the report. We have to make the facts very clear in our report. You mean the chronology of the redevelopment? Yes, and the agreement as well. There is still something missing. Ms. Chan asked a lot of questions. I think you need to answer them. Please put it in an information paper. What about grantee M? Yes, because with the information we don't have to guess. So all the information from land exchange to what happens afterwards. Yes, my understanding is the background and the chronology. The same goes for grantee M. How come I think I have read about it? Just give us a chronology for us to prepare the report. Well, the agreement with grantee M has been clearly stated in the land lease. I will give you information about background and also how things developed to help you understand. Yes. Paul and then Tanya. Sorry about jumping all over the place. Well, I think we should just simply call it the Scouts Association instead of grantee N. We have a lot of documents. We have some of the information in Annex 1 to 3 in Gen 20. In Annex 1, we find a lot of terms. If we get all the correspondence, I'm afraid that we may not have time to deal with it. I think it's for the chairman to decide. Well, let me refer to Annex 2, page 81 in Gen 20. It's a letter about land premium. I think it was still being negotiated. Well, there were reply to some lands issues, negotiation on the price. Paragraph 4, there was a force to vacate the existing headquarters. And then it says that they asked the government to reconsider the premium. And there was also the construction cost. It relied on the lotteries fund, maybe over optimistic. I think it's a rather complicated matter. And if we, well, it's quite rare for PAC to go into such depth. I only asked for a summary. I just want to include some basic information in our report. Well, we need the chronology, yes. I'm afraid that we're talking about thousands of pages in document. I thank Ms. Chan for going into details. My understanding of Ms. Chan's questioning is the usual questioning tactics, but she did not put her case. If she did not put her case to the witness, then the witness would not have the chance to give supplementary information or rebut what was put. This is not desirable. Perhaps I will ask some questions to fill in the gaps. At that time, the premium was 30,200,000. It's the Cox Road headquarters. Can you remember how much the land was sold? The site was sold. It was sold to Emperor. I don't have the information off the top of my head. Please give us the information afterwards. 2. There were a lot of questions about the management committee. Please refer to Annex 4, page 85 to 87. Gen 20, yes. I believe, well, actually, what is this membership of EXCO? When? Is it the latest one? So, did you reconvene the executive committee, or was it an old one? Sorry, speakers off mic. The committee, a committee of the Scout Association that oversees policies and directions. So it's the one that had a lot of meetings. Well, previously it was said that there was an executive committee that had 2 meetings, and then that's it. And this one, it seems that it has had a lot of meetings. $105 times. Paragraph I of Jan 20 from 2000 and 2017 May. Is that right? Annex 4. Please refer to the end. There is the Home Affairs Bureau. Representative of the Education Bureau and also representative of the Liaison Office. Is that right? Secretary, yes. The composition of this executive committee with members from the government. Is it the case that it was like that in the past? Yes. The functions of this executive committee. The structure and functions, are they similar? Is the executive committee similar to the management committee you want to re-establish? Well, they're different. This is the executive committee. It's a general committee that looks at general issues, say for example, policies. And the management committee will look at accounts, facilities, and also income and expenditure. It focuses on a smaller area. So the one that stops is the management committee, not the executive committee, which convenes regularly. May I ask the Secretary to refer to paragraph H of Jan 20. Basically, it says that the management committee convened in 1989 and not afterwards. And then at the request of the HAB, the management committee was reactivated. However, the functions and terms of reference remain more or less unchanged. So would you like to add anything in this regard? What do you want me to change? So during the time when the management committee did not convene, can the executive committee perform functions similar to the management, say for example, looking at the accounts?
Chairman, they certainly were aware of the incomes and expenditures of the institution. They were aware of the financial situation. Were they involved in preparing the budgets? Yes, they were. So the picture wasn't that there was no management committee meeting, therefore there was entirely no supervision. The government was not aware of anything. Was it correct to say so? Now to put it positively, the accounts, the incomes, expenditure, finance of institutions, facilities, things like that. The executive committee was doing supervision continuously. There were continuous meetings. There were meetings, and the HAB was also involved. I hope the secretary and other officials will refer to Annex 3, page 83.
剛才咧就陳雙如就問過關於亦都。
Ms. Tanya Chan has collected a lot of information through the internet. The income, the revenue of the institution, and also subsidy received by the institution. Annex 3 listed the amount of subventions over the years. We all know that in 2004, 2005, 2006, there were two reductions. $570,000 and $67,000. Can the Secretary confirm this? Yes, I can confirm this. The number is correct. Concerning this institution, you may not have information in hand, but if need be, please provide information after the meeting. Now, they are a uniform group. The amount of subsidy in comparison with other uniform groups, is there any comparison? Can there be comparison, or is it a comparison of apples and oranges? Well, we'll later provide the subvention to all uniform groups and also the numbers of these uniform groups. Now, you do provide subvention to uniform groups, but over the years, you should put down the numbers because there has been changes in numbers. 10 years ago, how many members? Now, how many members? And we can see the amount of subvention and also why there has been increases or decreases. I do have some information in hand. Say for this institution, total number. It has the highest number among all uniform groups. 2016-17, over 40,000 members. And then second is about 20,000 odd. So many years ago, 10,000, 20,000, the number of members is increasing. Mr. Chair is asking the subvention per head. I think vis-a-vis the number of members. Well, we have to follow the decision of the EXCO. Chairman, thank you for pointing out the trend. The number has increased, number of members has increased, but the amount of subvention has not increased substantially over the years. And in comparison with other groups, what are the increase in numbers and what are the increases in amount? That will be a better comparison. And we can see that this project is able to control the subvention amount of this uniform group, which has the largest number of members. Is my observation correct? If you look at this institution in the past 3 years, the total number is about 42,000 members in the past 3 years. In 2014-15 till 2016-17, there was an increase, and the amount of increase was not small. The increase was not based on the amount of the number of members. It was because we doubled the subvention to uniform groups. The CE was of the view that uniformed groups play a very important role in youth development, and therefore in his policy address, he announced an increase in subvention to youth groups, uniformed groups, so that the uniformed groups could have more resources in organizing activities and attracting more members. Therefore, this institution has also received an increase in subvention like other uniformed groups. Let's look at the numbers. From 2001 to 2014, the range was about $16 million, $17 million. In 2014-15 to 2016-17, the number was less than the increase was less than 100%. But the policy at in that year was to double. Yes, in recent years we doubled the subvention. It started in that year, similar to other uniform groups. A final question. Well, please go on. In Gen 20, the EXCO policy did not set a timeline as to when the policy objective should be achieved. The authority, the administration, has explained that they would try to achieve that, and if it is not achievable, they would ask for amending the objective. Is it your understanding, Mr. Secretary? Yes, indeed. I act like doing examination in court. I just want to clarify the picture. Thank you.
喺你問之前，我想問一問呢個睇一睇呢個 跟住都係同軍總會嗰個18嗰度啦。
Tanya, it's also about the Scout Association. 18. The special condition, was it approved by the Lands Department? I do refer to the lease. The special conditions. You should supervise, though, and enforce those conditions. Depends on the terms of the lease. Sometimes the bureau responsible would be specified. If you may refer to Gen 18 Annex 1.
For the above mentioned lot number.
可唔可以講多次啊，主席
Chairman, Gen 18 Annex 1.
Meeting comprising of representatives so and so so and so for the for the efficient operation of the income generating facilities of 呢個 building 啦。In view of the occupation permit 又開始做，咁你叫佢即刻做啦。咁你哋有冇監察咧？佢開個會定係你冇監察咧
？Did you supervise this? The special condition was to be enforced by you, don't you? Wasn't that? The provision is there. You put it down, but you didn't do it. Well, it was put down very clearly. The Director of Social Welfare would be responsible. Now, the special grant, it is a condition of special grant. It was not given by the Director of Social Welfare. You ask the Director of Social Welfare to execute that. According to the situation, now that was the condition for the grantee, a special condition, you put it down there. If they didn't call any meeting, they hadn't fulfilled the condition. Is it correct to say so? I want to clarify this. The Lands Department has a responsible to check on the condition and term. After the land grant was given, we gave copies to the bureaus and departments concerned. We liaise very closely, and if need be, according to the direction of the bureau, we would inform the grantee to call the meeting. Now, I asked you, because Mr. Chair has asked you questions on the Management Committee, and I tried to find out the terms of reference of the Management Committee. And I discovered that in Annex 1 there was a special term. You grant the land, and this lot has a revenue generation facility, and therefore they have to have a management committee. This management committee is different from the Executive Council, EXCO, of the Scout Association. That is why there is the management committee to supervise the income-generating element.
忽然間冇開到呢個會，直至到咁個情況，邊個管嗰啲咧？點管咧？係咪？所以呢個又係一個。
So the situation is not very desirable, isn't it? Now, in the 2014 protocol, after that, something has improved. The Director of Lands has come to brief us because in the paper there is also reference to that, and nobody is responsible for managing the lease conditions, and finally it falls on the plate of the Lands Department, and the Lands Department has too heavy a burden. The Executive Committee is different because it looks at the whole Scout Association, whereas the Management Committee looks at the income generation facility of the whole building. Thank you, Chairman, for clarifying this. Now, if we want to seek the facts or the truth, if the Secretary has to provide the subvention of each uniform group per year, you have to tell us whether the uniform groups have been given lots without any given lands without any premium, and how much income they have generated from those facilities. There is also the Boys and Girls Association. It is very big, and they also have such a land. And so you need the Secretary has to provide more information on that. According to the policy, if there is a commercial element, then the subvention should be reduced gradually. If we just look at the subvention and we ignore the commercial element and the income generated and premium, and also the land is given without any premium, that will be unfair to the uniform groups. There are 11 uniformed groups, subvented uniformed groups. Some have a long history, some are new, just like the youth troop. The youth troop is not a subvented uniform group. Let me go back to the Chinese temple. We're jumping around. So please point out which part of the report. Mr. Lam is not here, but Mr. Lam did ask some questions at the second meeting, and we have a transcript. The 19th of May, VER2, VER2. Maybe you can read out the page 97, page 97. Starting from page 97, Mr. Lam asked the Secretary, in the past 10 years, nothing has been done. And the audit report 5.7a pointed out that the delegation agreements were not signed, and the questions were related to the documents checked, and also who supervised the secretariat of the CTC, and there was a discussion. We now come to 116. The chairman asks whether the Secretary could provide all the information, so on and so forth. And then the administration provided information, provided a paper in respect of Organization A. We have a lot of documents. Mr. Chairman, give me a minute. It should be Jan. Yes. Jan 13. No. Jan 10. Jan 10. Well, Jan 10. I want to confirm this. Jan 10. Sorry, I'm a bit confused. Does the Home Affairs Bureau provided a relevant document? Jan 13. Yes. Jan 13. If it is in Jan 13, from page 55, Annex 4, in respect of the correspondence with this organization, the delegation agreement mentioned in the audit report. The delegation agreement expired on the 14th of July 2006. And then there was a return slip I assumed that it was signed and it was given to Ms. Tam of the Secretariat, 26th of July 2006. It was agreed that the delegation agreement would be extended to the 31st of October of the same year. And then the CTC Secretariat issued another letter on the 13th of September forcing them to reply. Now the Secretary answered that there was a template or a model text is the template in page 56 altogether to page 66. Yes, this is the template or model text. Now the colleague continued to follow up the matter, but there has been no reply and no return slip signed. If there is, then there should be a return slip. Now there was further follow-up, and then in October. Now I see something here in terms of letter. 29th of October, 2007, page 70, and then 18th of May 2017. And then there was no correspondence in between. And then we see matters discussed at the CTC, and a lot of things were effaced. And then on the 24th of January 2016, and then one in August about finance, there was follow-up action, but things were blacked out, and I didn't know what is underneath that. It seems that there is a window for 9 or 10 years. Can you see that this is not desirable? And the Home Affairs did contact Organization A's representative, but there was no record. Was there no record? And what is your understanding of this?
Chairman, for the window mentioned by Ms. Tanya Chan, that is for the period in between there was no communication. Yes, that's a fact. And that's also pointed out by Audit. I repeatedly said that this is not ideal. However, for the CTC, in 2016, on the 25th of August, a finance management committee was held, and this case was discussed. Well, that was before the investigation by Audit. So they took the initiative to look at the case and try to find out one. So in 2016, we started to look at the case again, and then for 2016 to 17, we've been following up with the CTC Secretariat, and also through our district officers, we have been doing some negotiation. As for the Island District Office and the correspondences, you can see the relevant correspondence in Annex 12. So before 2016 it was not ideal, no meeting was held, and then in 2016 you found that it was not ideal, you wanted to make improvements, and then after 2016 Audit started to investigate, and now you're working on it, right, Tanya? Well, Chairman, I want to be fair to the Secretary. I've been looking at the documents, and at that time the Secretary's explanation was that there had been communication before 2016. In the paper, we don't see it. Maybe they did it verbally. When you answered Mr. Lam, you said that you have followed up. Well, just tell us more about the follow-up. Well, we do not have the verbatim record. So if you can show me the verbatim record, then I can tell you more. But my colleagues and Audit have read the verbatim record. There should be no mistake. Can you show the Secretary the verbatim record? Well, we have to confirm that the record is correct. Chairman, I'm just starting to read it now. Do you want me to respond now? Well, Chairman, it doesn't matter. Let's take a break. If you think what's written in the verbatim record is not what you said that day, you should tell us. Please read the record and confirm if it's what you said. Well, Chairman, do you need time? Yes, I think he needs time. Yes, if you give us a little time, then I can read it. Okay, let's take a rest for 15 minutes.